Hello, so this is my reflection on the movie Little Man that we had to watch. So to start out with a memorable scene for me was when they took Nicholas off of oxygen and they were putting a humidifier up to his mouth basically to force him to learn how to breathe on his own. So this was a very memorable scene for me just because it was such a heartbreaking scene to have to watch, but it kind of revealed to me that, working with kids with disabilities or with kids who are going through a lot, it's important to not only focus on the individual at hand, like the infant, but also to remember that we're there to be encouraging and sympathetic towards the parents, because I couldn't even imagine what it would be like as a parent to have to see that. And then 5 things that kind of I was wondering about through out the movie is number 1 was the point that they said, when does caring become cruelty? And so that was a question I was kind of asking too, based off of all that Nicholas had to go through. Number 2 was when the doctor had said, we're basically experimenting on the baby at this point, and is this truly ethical? And so I was kind of wondering that throughout the whole point is when does it become unethical, if anything? And then 3, something I was wondering in general is that for people who watch this movie, does it change their mind about the perception of when someone wants to terminate their child, if you will? I think for me anyway, this movie has really shown that it's not, the decision to terminate a child is not really a black or white situation. You have to look at each situation individually, and that there's a huge gray area. And kind of expanding on that into the 4th thing I was wondering was how Nicole had said that Nicholas is their $2.7 million baby, and that it took 24/7 care for him. And so again, I feel like that's why the decision for a parent to terminate a child or an infant or whatever it may be, it's just really based on the individual who has $2.7 million, and it makes me wonder how many people out there are stuck in this situation who understand that they don't have the time, they don't have the money, they don't have the resources to care for a child. So I feel like we have to approach this with a huge sensitivity, if you will. And then lastly, the last thing I was wondering throughout the movie was where's the line with the right to live and the right to die? And again, this kind of goes back to the third question, or to the third statement I had made, that it's not black and white at all, it's very gray. As far as an infant goes and a baby, they can't talk for themselves, so when do you draw that line as their right to live versus right to die? I know a lot of adults who would be in this situation would choose to die, and some would choose to fight. And so how do you really make that for an infant that doesn't speak for themselves? So something that I liked about this movie a lot was basically just the contradicting personalities of Gwen and Nicole. You have Nicole, who is very dreamer, if you will, like had the hope in her heart and stuff like that, where Gwen seemed very practical, very realistic, to the point, you know what I mean? And so I really liked this, and I think this was one of my favorite parts of the movie because it shows how each person is going to be affected differently when something drastic like this comes up. One thing I loved in the movie was how Nicole said her moral compass was just going left to right, back and forth, and it's so true. It's such a gray area, and where is the line as to am I doing what's right versus am I doing what's wrong? So I think it's important to look at these 2 contrasting couples and realize that there's no right answer, there's no good versus evil, black versus white, that when put in this real situation, these decisions are based off of very gray areas. And so lastly, the conflicting views that I had, I really didn't have any because as I was watching the movie, I was trying to take the perspective of each individual. So that includes Gwen, Nicholas, Nicole, the medical staff, what everyone was going through. And to me, I concluded that, taking into everyone's perspective, they were all very valid. So I guess if there were any conflicting things I had, it would be maybe medical staff. If they knew that Nicole was wholehearted, 100% in, maybe then they should be 100% in. So I guess maybe some of my conflicting values there would be that, you know, as medical staff, you need to do everything you can to save this child if the parent is willing to do something like that. But you also have to look at their side of it, is the limited resources, how much time it takes and staff, and you're taking up a position in the NICU another baby could. So again, I just feel like there wasn't really anything conflicting wholeheartedly to me, because it's just such a hard position to be in. So yeah, that's kind of my views on the movie Little Man, and thank you so much for watching.